So before I start the actual critique, here is just another video that I'm going to be using to show the solutions of the actual solves. I'll leave it linked in the description down below. Basically, it's for you to reference so you can see what the solutions from the solver were actually like. Let's start off here with the solution for the cross. So this was not the best solution you could have done. And the most obvious thing I can point out here is the way you inserted the last two pieces. So it was fine that you inserted the green like this, but when you brought this red piece over, instead of inserting it in like that, you could have moved the blue piece on top by just doing a U and then F prime, and then the blue is one move away from being solved. So that's a lot more efficient and it saves the extra move. Here is what it looked like. So what I'm noticing is that with your finger tricks, you're having a lot of excess motion and you're using a lot of wrist turns kind of, and I don't know, the finger tricks just look kind of unorthodox. Let's just say you want to insert this cross piece into here. What you did was you went like this and you used your right hand for inserting this cross piece for all of the moves. So what you can do is alternate with your left hand, start incorporating some finger tricks with that. So I would do it like this, F prime, R prime, with the right hand, but then I would pinch with the left hand like this, since it's already right into position with the pointer finger, and do an F prime like that. So it's a lot quicker instead of going like that. I mean, you could go like this, but it's a little bit risky in this case, but I would just use this finger instead and it would look like this. Okay, so the thing I just noticed, if you just saw on screen, you looked in the back. I see a lot of cubers do this a lot, rotating the cube like this. Instead, what you should be doing is just looking slightly to the left and right for your first pair, and most of the time it's going to be pretty easy to recognize. But I understand that sometimes it's hard to see what like this back color might be because it's the red and blue pair and you have the red and blue edge in the back like this, but otherwise you recognized it somewhat quickly after you looked in the back. It was a U2 and then a rotation, so the wide D move is somewhat smart, but at the same time you could do this rotationless by doing an L prime U2 L to pair it up, or you could just do a R prime U2 R. And the way you would pair it up in the back, since it's very difficult to, I would solve it like this, R prime U2 R, and then you could go like this, wide F prime L F, like that, or you could insert it in the back with this, it's wide L U L prime U prime M prime. I feel like this one's a little bit faster because this is quite difficult to finger trick, so I would just solve it in the back like that. Otherwise, it was good that you solved it into the back here. It was kind of hard to see what you were doing, but once again, you have that recognition and you're looking around, especially for that second pair here, that hesitation, which will definitely slow down your times. So you see that a lot of top solvers, what they do is they just quickly glance to the side and they're already looking for the pieces of the next pair that they're going to solve rather than looking in the back. Basically, you're just trying to look at what you're going to solve next rather than what you're solving at the current moment. This is going to help you have better flow in your solve and ultimately lead to you not having those pauses like we just saw there. But anyway, for your second pair, you had your first pair in the back right slot. Other than that, I think this would honestly be the best option in this case. You could do a wide U like that and then do a keyhole. While that is good, I think that it'd kind of be difficult to see and look ahead to in a solve. So I think it is a good idea that you just did this and then inserted it, because then you can transition into solving this pair. This is what I would do, and then cancel into solving that. Anyway, the way it was executed was okay. It's just that you had this weird finger trick. It was the right index finger pushed like that. When you're doing an L move like this, your pointer finger is already in the position where you could do a U prime like that, and it'd be a lot more risky because there is more of a chance to lock up. So the way I would finger trick this pair is just do a U2 like that, L, U prime, L prime, and then insert it with my right hand. Transitioning onto the third pair here, the solution was fine in itself, but there was a pair there that you could have done that would have been better instead. So taking a look at this, you rotate because you're about to solve the orange and green pair. The edge is right here and the corner is right here. So you're doing like the beginner's method thing, something like that. Two rotations there, rotating there and rotating back. If there are two rotations for your solution, then there is typically a rotationless way of doing it. So what I mean by this is that for the third pair, you could have done this one, the orange and blue, by doing a U and then you have it like this, and you could do L prime U, L2, U prime, L prime. But instead you decided to do this pair, so what I would have done instead was rotate, but then from this angle, it'd be a lot easier for me to just do a U prime, and then to solve this, I could just do a sledgehammer, and it makes it a nice split pair here, like that. And the solution for the last pair was actually really solid here. I would have done the exact same thing in that solution. Okay, and here is your T perm. The execution wasn't too great. There was quite a big lockup there, but you finish it otherwise. Let me just go over the T perm finger tricks really quick. I pinch my pointer finger and thumb on the top right edge here, and I go like this. And basically this avoids regrips, so that way I don't have to go like this, because I recognize you started like this for the T perm and it was like something like that. But I find that if you finger trick it like this, it has no regrips and it is quite a bit faster. Okay, so as for the actual solution, it's playing on screen right now, and the cross solution was definitely inefficient because there was one thing I think you could have done a lot better here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You could have done R prime, that's 1, 2, move that over. And then if you want to really get into this, you could have preserved this pair here and done an F prime, which is 3 moves, 4, 5, 6, 7. But at the same time, you're still preserving this pair, and even though it's the same amount of moves, you're still able to have a really nice first pair, which can correspond to some other stuff being really lucky, such as this and maybe that. Overall, just like a much better solve because you already kind of looked ahead to your first pair, and it just makes things a lot easier. So that's what I would have done in that scenario. Finishing up the cross, here's the first pair. Once again, that hesitation in the back is something that isn't good, and doing your first pair, the solution was somewhat okay. I would say this is what a lot of intermediate solvers do. There was the rotation here, and you would solve it like this, doing like double inverse sexy to solve it. But there is a lot better way to solve this, and also in addition to that, I wouldn't do that pair. The things that immediately stand out to me are this pair, the red and orange, R, U prime, R prime, and then inserted it into the back. Anyway, a more efficient way you could have solved this pair right here was did a rotation to also have your slots on the left, and did a sledgehammer like that, R prime, F, R, F prime. That saves you some moves, and then you could solve it like that since it's a split pair. Here's the next pair. You recognized it, the green and red in the back. The solution wasn't the greatest, but there was that additional U move that I noticed to sort of like set it up and kind of understand, because I know that what I learned was that this color has to match up over here in order to pair it up, something like that. I mean, the solution was pretty good other than the rotations, so you definitely could have reduced that. What you could have done instead actually is, instead of matching the color up right here, it doesn't have to always match up. You could just do R, U2, R prime, and there would have already been a pair like in this position, and then you could have inserted it like that. So R, U2, R prime from right here, and then do wide F, R prime, wide F prime. Here is the third pair. Quite a big hesitation here, and you have diag slots, which isn't the best, but it's something that you have to work with here. Rotation, and one thing is, never take your hand off of the cube like this, like your right hand was off of it. That's just a tip that you need to keep in mind. Other than that, the solution was decent for this pair, considering you just rotated. And in this case scenario, what I would do instead, since this is pretty bad and you have to rotate for this, I would just do the F, R, U, F prime, the Jaden McNeil thing. So I'd start with an F, and I would solve the back slot first. So what we have here is this slot is open, so we can easily manipulate things by using only R and U moves. We can pair this up by going like this, U prime, R prime, U2, R, and here we have that pair by doing a U prime like that, pairing it up, and then U, F prime. I know it's quite advanced, but this is just something that I think would be useful in the future if you ever have diag slots like that. Okay, so here is the last pair, and that was a very inefficient solution because you had like 3 sexy moves, I think. This was a pretty easy pair that you could have done, the green and orange. I'm not sure why you just did this and then took it out, something like that. Instead, I thought this was pretty simple. You could just do a U prime RU prime to pair it up, hiding the corner, moving the edge over, bringing it back. And what you could have done is a sledgehammer here. That way you don't get a really bad dot case. And you had a dot case which you did 2 look OLL for, and it was just F sexy F prime and then a fat F sexy F prime like that. But the OLL case, the one I use, this sticker has to be in the top right, the bar here, wide F sexy F prime, U, and then it's just a T case. But in reality, it was just another soon, and and the PLL was just a G perm. So here's how it was executed. From what I can tell, the finger tricks aren't the greatest. Just making sure that you're not like regripping so much and moving your hands like this will definitely help a lot. In this cross solution, I honestly wouldn't do green. When I have a cross piece like this, it's going to take 3 moves to be solved, so typically don't want to solve on that cross color. One thing that might be really nice is on yellow cross here, because I think it is apparent that you're color neutral. So here's the yellow cross pieces here, 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 and here. So what we can do is hold it like this with white on top and blue in front, and do a B like that to move that over, that cross piece in, L prime, F prime, and now these two are relative to each other, just a D prime away from being solved. And then we can do an R2 to finish off the cross like that. Okay, on to the execution of the first pair. This is not the greatest solution because it had 2 rotations in it. So solving green cross, after we have the cross finished, the cube was in this position. So the first thing I'd probably notice is this green, yellow, and red pair. So it can be easily solved right over here. That's something that I can definitely look for. So for this pair, for solving it, the orange and yellow, what you could do is just rotate it this way like you did, but then you do an F prime like that. Now it's set up. Then you can do a U prime, and then just, since it's a split pair, you can insert it into the back. If we take a look at the solution, it looks quite locky because you use like this weird like push finger trick. And if you're going to compete in competitions, it's going to be quite difficult to pull that off, especially when you're under pressure, you have nerves. So, and just using the regular U flicks, U2 flicks, stuff like that. One thing I have to know is it is pretty good that you solve the pair into the back, which is a good habit you want to get into. Once you solved it into the back, you could have noticed that there would have been a split pair right here. You could easily just solve it, because otherwise you solved a pretty bad pair with a rotation like this, and it was a good solution, but at the same time there was something a lot better. So here's the execution. It was pretty fast. I don't have anything to critique about how the finger tricks were of the second pair. It was pretty nice. And then another rotation again. Something you could have done from here was also notice this pair, and you could do an L prime, U, L like that, and here you have a pair. I probably would expect that you wouldn't see that in a solve. Here's your solution for that pair that was just solved. It was with two inverse sexy moves. If you're in this position, I would honestly rotate. So now you have the pairs on the back right and front right slot. So solving this pair, the red and white, I would do a U2, so the corners here and the edges right here. And I would do a sledgehammer, and now it sets it up to a split pair. Okay, and now here is this last pair. You take it out and then insert it. That's a pretty like beginner method way of doing it. Although that is a okay solution maybe for like one-handed or something, it is not the best. What I would do is just do a U prime here, and what you do is a sledgehammer, and that pairs it up. And in this case, there'd be a dot case at the top. What I would do is just do a sledgehammer. Here is the OLL execution. 2-look OLL. I recommend learning some of the OLLs. I won't go over it here, but I would just start looking into that if you want to become sub 15. I don't really have anything to critique about your last layer. It was pretty great overall. So starting with the analysis of the solve, it looked like you started with white cross. There was a rotation in the cross solution, which is something you never want to have. Instead, you would want to use like wide moves or something else. Looks like you didn't fully plan out your cross in inspection. Maybe it was some like error, but the rule of thumb is just never have a rotation in your cross, because you should always have it planned in inspection, especially at your speed, like borderline sub 15, maybe sub 20. So all the pieces are here, white pieces. Something we could do to solve this cross is I would move this blue piece up to match it up, do an R to move that cross piece over here above the blue, and when I do an F prime, it moves this like that. So that is 3 moves already. Then I do a D, L, F2. So that is 6 moves, and then that's 7 to solve the cross. So transitioning onto the first pair, it looks like you are doing the blue and orange into the back. Pretty good solution, not gonna lie. So it was a rotation. At least you're solving it into the back left slot, which is a good slot to eliminate. One thing I'm noticing is that your cube is quite locky. If we're taking a look at a lot of these turns, I'm playing this in reverse, but we can see that some of the turns are quite locky. Like, you use a lot of corner cutting. I can tell this is probably like an RS3M cube of some sort, but if you need to adjust it with lubes, like set up your cube a bit more, because that's probably what's leading you to having all these lockups. So that is the third pair, the blue and red. So you do a sledgehammer and you take it out and insert it. There's a better solution to solve that case. This isn't quite like what the cube looked like when you were solving, but this is the pair. So in order to solve it, what I would do is just do a rotation and have this in the back, so you could solve it into the back slot and do a U. So the pair is right here, and do an L prime, U prime, L, and then it sets it up to that pair like that. But what you can do is just cancel into solving that pair. So L prime, U prime, L2, U, L prime. It's a lot more efficient than doing these F moves and these unnecessary moves. We are moving on to the last pair. This is the corner of the green-orange pair, and this is the green-orange edge. But it looks like you take out the green-orange edge and do a U2, and then pair it up like that. If I'm not mistaken, this is the exact case you had. It looked like this, just took out the corner and the edge and then solved it pretty normally. What I would do instead, it's not that big of a difference, is just do R, U prime, R prime, and then set it up to like something like that. But most of the time you're gonna use that slot to solve a different pair, and you're gonna end up taking those pieces out of that slot. So if I'm solving a pair like this, I'm taking these pieces out and they're moved in a different way, so we can possibly set up to something better. Okay, so I really like what you did right there. That is a sledgehammer to solve the edges. So it looks like this is pretty basic pair. The edge is right here and the corner RU2, and then I liked how you canceled into there, nothing to critique. So there we go, and then a nice anti-soon. Finger tricks are totally fine on this, I would say, and we're just left with a G perm. So I think what really messed you up on this solve is just the cross solution, because you had that rotation and was a little bit unsure about how to solve it. So the first thing I noticed right off the bat is that the cross solution was fairly decent, actually. Not gonna lie, it was about 7 moves, I'm pretty sure, and it was solved in a way that you didn't have to rotate at all. I honestly would have done like a pretty similar cross to you, except that there's another solution that had 6 moves. So you could do this, L, F prime, R prime, like that, and then D prime, and then put these 2 pieces in. After the cross, the first pair was not the greatest. So if you were to do this pair here, instead of doing some weird insert by like going like that somehow and inserting this corner in here, what I would just do instead is do a U prime, and to pair this up, just do a R prime, U, R. You're hiding this edge and you're moving this corner away from it, so that way you're forming it into a split pair. That basically saves a lot of moves, because as you can see on screen, there are quite a bit of moves for solving this pair. Unnecessary things that was definitely not needed. But the good thing is you solved this pair into the back. You saw it pretty nicely. Although if you did insert this pair on the right side like that, pretty easy 2-gen solution for this pair, and then you would just be left with a free split pair there. Otherwise, after inserting, there was a rotation. It's pretty understandable since you have this pair already, and then what you're left with is just a split pair for the end like that, and you rotated to insert it. So something you could have done instead is do a rotationless insert here. It saves you a lot of time. Just do wide F, R, wide F prime. And here there's quite a bit of a hesitation for the 2-look OLL doing wide F, sexy F prime. I think because you were going really fast, that's why you didn't really have time to recognize this OLL, I guess. Otherwise, this is a pretty easy OLL to learn. So I would hold it like this with this bar in the back. So like a sexy move, R, U, R prime, but then with a U at the end, and then sledgehammer, RU2 R prime. I mean, it still gives you the same exact case. Another way you could solve this end perm is by doing this algorithm. It's a little bit more risky. You'd go like this. It looks pretty cool also, so it would look something like this. Just something you can put into consideration. Otherwise, that was solve number 5. It was probably the best in terms of the solution and just all of the techniques. Okay, so now I'm just going to be going over some things that you could definitely work on in terms of the 5 solves that I've seen. The first thing is make sure to plan your whole entire cross and inspection. It's going to reduce a lot of time, but also allow you to look ahead to your first pair a lot easier, which is going to definitely be needed, especially when you're going to become sub 10 and beyond. I say this in a lot of my videos, but if you look up example solves of other top solvers, you can see their cross solutions and you can see if they're more efficient or not. If you do something similar, that's going to help a lot to see the most efficient, finger trick friendly. Don't be afraid to also use like wide moves to solve your cross, maybe like a wide U move, wide R to finish something off. A lot of people do it in order to like cancel 2 moves in a way. In terms of F2L solutions, I think like a lot of them, it takes you 2 steps to solve it. Like you take it out or something and then take it out and then do something else and then insert it in a way like that. I would recommend learning some more advanced F2L and even polishing your intermediate F2L. That way you can solve your F2L cases in just one simple step. If I had a pair like this, the green and orange pair, you could just solve it in one step into the back like that, or doing a pair like a sledgehammer here, inserting it and solving like that. So like advanced techniques like that. Or the third thing I want to mention was just OLL. You can start transitioning out of 2-look OLL, and I recommend learning full OLL. Although it's a lot of algorithms, learning OLL is really important, and it's just a bunch of triggers. So you could do like something like this, R prime, U prime, R prime, F. There are a lot less moves than PLL would be. Some resources would be like jperm.net or maybe SpeedCubeDB. Apart from that, your PLL is pretty good, except that some of your finger tricks are a little bit weird. Make sure to stay in home grip for most of the time, something like this, and making sure that your finger tricks are most optimized. Some resources I can recommend are looking at Brian Sun's PLL and OLL finger tricks video. He has some really efficient PLLs that he uses. Some of the moves might be a little bit more advanced. Once you put it into practice a lot more, it's going to be a lot faster. So I learned this algorithm from him, the RUS U Perm, and it has been pretty fun to execute, but also it's something I sometimes use in my solves. I will just link those resources in the description down below. Otherwise, that was it for this critique. Thank you so much for submitting your solves. I had over 40 minutes of footage here, so I have to get editing to that. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll catch you guys in my next video. Peace.